I was sitting at my desk, the light from the monitor illuminating my tired face as the hands of the clock ticked down to yet another night of working late. Even though I was exhausted, the excitement of seeing my project come to life kept me awake. I had been developing an application for months that, in my view, could revolutionize the company's productivity. But, unfortunately, my work went unnoticed by almost everyone. I was just another programmer in the vast gear of our corporation. I remember the first time I had the idea. I was in a boring quarterly goals meeting, and my mind started to wander. What if there was a way to do all of this more efficiently? I thought. And so, I started doodling sketches in my notebook, concepts that would later become the basis of my app. Nights spent working in silence in the empty office became a routine. Each line of code written brought a little more life to my creation. I knew I had something special on my hands, something that could finally take me out of the veteran's shadow and give me the recognition I craved. Finally, the prototype was ready. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to present it to the board. I scheduled a meeting and spent the night before rehearsing every detail of my presentation. On the day of the meeting, I entered the conference room with my heart in my mouth. The entire board was there, including Mark, the head of the department and one of the company's most respected veterans. He always treated me condescendingly, as if I were just a kid playing at being a programmer. "Well, Jacob, what do you have for us today?" Mark asked, with a slight hint of disdain in his voice. I took a deep breath and started the presentation, showing how my application could drastically optimize the organization's productivity. I explained each feature, each benefit, and how the implementation would be smooth and efficient. In the end, I turned to the board, anxiously awaiting their reactions. There was a moment of silence before Mark began to speak. "Interesting, Jacob. But, do you really think something like this is feasible? It seems too ambitious. Maybe even naive." His voice was thick with skepticism, and I could see some of the other directors nodding in agreement. "I understand your concern, Mark," I replied, trying to remain calm. "But I believe that with the right resources, we can make this work. This app has the potential to transform the way we operate." Mark let out a muffled laugh. "Transform the way we operate? Jacob, you barely have enough experience to understand how our company works. Maybe you should focus on something more realistic." His words cut me like a knife. I knew he was underestimating my work, but hearing that in front of the entire board was a heavy blow. I tried to argue a little more, but the decision already seemed made. They weren't ready to believe me. The meeting ended, and I left the room with my head bowed. But instead of giving up, that rejection only increased my determination. I knew I had something valuable and I wasn't going to let others' lack of vision get me down. I went back to my desk and called Sarah, a business analyst at the company who had always shown interest in my ideas. "Sarah, I need your help. I have something big here, but I need someone who believes in it as much as I do." "Of course, Jacob. Meet me at the coffee shop in half an hour. Let's talk about it," she replied, with a note of excitement in her voice. That meeting with Sarah would be the first step in making my dream a reality, and I was determined to prove everyone, especially Mark, wrong about me and my app. The journey was just beginning, and I was no longer alone. I remember well the moment I started to notice that the application I was developing was attracting the attention of external investors. I was in my little cubicle, surrounded by piles of code and diagrams, when I received an email from an angel investor interested in learning more about the project. My heart raced. It was the opportunity one had been waiting for so long. That same afternoon, during a routine meeting, Mark, my boss, seemed angrier than usual. He looked at me with a mixture of contempt and suspicion. After the meeting, he called me into his office. "Jacob, I need to talk to you," he said, with a tone that left no room for refusal. I entered, already anticipating that the dialogue would not be the best. Mark started with a speech about the importance of collaboration and how crucial it was to keep everyone on the same page within the company. However, he quickly changed his tone. "I heard that you are receiving attention from outside investors. That is true?" he asked, crossing his arms and looking at me with penetrating eyes. Yes, Mark. I received an email earlier today. They're interested in the app I'm developing, I replied, trying to remain calm. Interesting. But you know that all the work you do here belongs to the company, right? He was smiling, but his eyes showed something else. We don't want anyone to have ideas of greatness beyond our control. I left Mark's office with a bad feeling. Something told me he wasn't happy with my progress. And I was right. Over the next few weeks, I started to notice that some of my reports were changing. Important data simply disappeared or was modified, and this began to affect the perception of my work within the company. The other veterans, who had previously given me some support, were now more distant, cold. It was clear that Mark was moving his pieces around the board to discredit me. One night, while working late, Sarah, a business analyst I greatly respected, showed up at my workstation. Jacob, can I talk to you for a minute? She seemed worried. Of course, Sarah. What there was? I asked, turning away from the computer and giving it my full attention. I'm noticing some strange things happening with your reports and data. This doesn't seem like a mistake, but rather something deliberate. I think Mark is trying to sabotage you. I knew! I exclaimed, feeling a mixture of anger and relief at finally having confirmation of my suspicions. But why? He sees you as a threat, Jacob. His app has the potential to change a lot here, and he doesn't want to lose control. We need to be strategic if we want to get around this. From that point on, Sarah and I started working together, not only on developing the app, but also on ways to protect our work. She taught me about the intricate internal politics and suggested tactics to keep the project alive despite sabotage. We're going to need concrete evidence to unmask Mark, she said one night. And we also need to make sure investors see the true value of your app. I agree. But how do we do this without him noticing? I asked, sensing the complexity of the situation. Leave it with me. I have some ideas, she said, with a confident smile. So, we started implementing security measures in the application, tracking data and documenting each sabotage attempt. Sarah also suggested that we present a version of the app at an upcoming important conference. It would be the perfect stage to showcase our work and, at the same time, expose Mark's actions. As the conference date approached, tension increased. Mark seemed increasingly desperate, and his attempts to discredit my work became more aggressive. But thanks to Sarah's help, we were able to stay one step ahead. This phase was a true test of my resilience and determination. I knew I was dealing with powerful forces within the company, but I also knew I wasn't alone. Sarah became not only a valuable ally, but also someone I could trust completely. And so, with each obstacle overcome, my confidence grew. I was ready to face any challenge that came my way, knowing that recognition for my work was within reach. When Sarah first approached me, I was exhausted, discouraged, and ready to give up. The board's skepticism and Mark's sabotage had affected me deeply. On that particular day, I was sitting in the company cafeteria, trying to find the energy to keep going. It was then that Sarah sat down across from me, with a smile that immediately caught my attention. You're Jacob, right? The creator of that amazing app everyone's talking about, she said, holding out her hand. Yes, it's me, I replied, surprised by the direct approach. But the way things are going, I don't know how much longer I can keep going. She smiled, apparently understanding my frustration. Can I join you for a moment? I think we have a lot to talk about. While we were drinking coffee, Sarah began to explain the company's political intricacies to me. Mark is a veteran, and he feels threatened by anything that might change the status quo. He has a network of allies who blindly support him, but that doesn't mean everyone here is against you, she clarified. I understand, but how can I get around this resistance? It seems like everything I do is sabotaged, I blurted out. Sarah thought for a moment before responding. We have to be strategic. First, we need to gather solid evidence of the positive impact your app can have. I can help you do that. And second, we need to find allies within the company who are not under Mark's influence. That conversation was a watershed moment. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this fight. Sarah became not only a valuable ally, but also a friend. We spent hours analyzing data and developing strategies to present the app in an even more convincing way. One such afternoon at work, as we were immersed in graphs and reports, Sarah looked at me and said, "Jacob, have you ever thought about what it would be like if this all went well? If your application was finally recognized?" I laughed, a little in disbelief. "I've been dreaming about it every night. But it seems so far away." "It's not that far away," she said, placing her hand over mine. "With a little more effort, we can do it." Her touch took me by surprise, but it also brought a sense of comfort. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I would do without your help." "We're in this together," she replied with a twinkle in her eye. Over time, our partnership deepened. Sarah taught me how to navigate the turbulent waters of corporate politics, and I involved her more in the technical development of the app. Our work together began to bear fruit, and the application was increasingly impressive. One night, while we were working late at the office, Sarah said, "Jacob, we need to consider presenting this at a conference. Something big, where they can't ignore us. Do you think we're ready?" I asked, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Yes, and we have to be. It's our best chance to bypass the internal sabotage and show the world what we've done," she stated with determination. As we spent more time together, mutual attraction became inevitable. On a cold fall night, after a long planning session, Sarah and I went to a bar near the company. Between laughter and deep conversations, I realized that my feelings for her went beyond the professional partnership. "Jacob," she said, looking straight into my eyes, "I really believe in you. Not just in your work, but in you as a person." "Sarah, I feel the same way," I confessed, unable to contain my smile. From that moment on, our relationship took a new direction. We were not only work partners, but also partners in life. And as we faced the difficulties and challenges that lay ahead, we knew that we were stronger together. The app was our creation, but the connection we developed was something even more special. In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to prepare the application presentation for the conference. Sarah was by my side every step of the way, and her support gave me the confidence I needed to face any adversity. We were ready to show the world what we had created and, most importantly, we were ready to face any obstacle together. The tension in the office was palpable. As Sarah and I worked together to promote the app, rumors of corporate espionage began to surface. I was focused on optimizing every detail of the app, but I couldn't ignore the growing buzz around me. The fear that confidential information might be leaked to a rival company kept me up at night. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Sarah approached my desk. His face was serious. "Jacob, we need to talk," she said, in a tone that left no room for doubt. "Of course, Sarah. What is happening?" I replied, as I put down the keyboard and turned to face her. She pulled out a chair and sat down next to me. "I've heard some things. And they're not good. It looks like a rival company is very interested in your app. What's more, it looks like someone inside might be collaborating with them," she revealed, her eyes reflecting concern. My stomach knotted. The idea that someone on our own team could be betraying our trust was disturbing. "Who do you think could be doing this?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Sarah sighed before responding. "I don't know for sure, but we have to be careful. We need to reinforce security and be alert to any suspicious behavior." I nodded. From that moment on, the priority was to protect our work. We began implementing additional security measures, encrypting sensitive data and monitoring access to the system. Late one night, while we were working in a nearly empty office, Sarah and I were talking about the situation. "You know, Jacob, this is all very stressful, but I'm glad we're in this together," Sarah said, giving me a meaningful look. "Me too, Sarah. I don't know what I would do without you here," I replied, feeling a wave of gratitude and something else that I still couldn't name. In the days that followed, the tension only increased. Every movement, every access to the system was meticulously monitored. I felt like I was in a minefield, waiting at any moment for something to explode. One morning, as we were having coffee in the office's small kitchen, Sarah approached with a thoughtful expression. "Jacob, I was analyzing some access logs and found something strange. It appears someone is trying to access confidential information outside of business hours," she said, handing me a sheet of records. "Who would be so careless as to do that?" I asked, analyzing the data. "I don't know yet, but this confirms our suspicions. We need to find out who's behind this before it's too late," she replied, the determination in her voice crystal clear. That night we decided to stay at the office late, hoping the person in charge would try again. The clock struck midnight when we finally saw suspicious activity on the system. "It's now, Jacob. Let's get this person," Sarah said, her eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. We followed the digital trails to a room at the back of the office. We slowly opened the door and there he was, one of the team's veterans, John, immersed in a computer, copying confidential files. "John?" My voice came out in disbelief. "What are you doing?" He turned around, pale as a ghost. "Jacob, I can explain," he stuttered, but before he could continue, Sarah interrupted him. "Explain what, John? That you are betraying the company and handing over information to a competitor?" His words were sharp like a blade. John hung his head, defeated. "They offered me a lot of money. I was having financial problems, and I didn't think straight," he admitted, his voice full of regret. "This does not justify your actions." "You almost destroyed everything we worked for," I said, feeling a mixture of anger and disappointment. Sarah and I took John to the safety of the building and reported the incident to management the next morning. The measures taken were quick and severe, but the relief I felt was immense. As we walked out of the office, Sarah took my hand. "We did it, Jacob. Now we can focus on what really matters," she said, smiling. "Yes, we did it. And I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah," I replied, squeezing her hand. The feeling of victory was bittersweet, but we knew our challenge was far from over. There was still much to be done before the crucial conference, but together we were ready to face any obstacle. When Ethan reappeared in my life, I felt a mixture of nostalgia and suspicion. We hadn't seen each other since graduation, but he seemed like the same friendly, helpful guy he always had. He met me by chance at a coffee shop near work, and the surprise was genuine. "Jacob! Man, it's been a long time," he said, with a wide smile and a quick hug. "Ethan! Wow, I can't believe I found you here. What have you been doing?" I replied, genuinely surprised. Ethan explained that he was working at a rival company, but assured him that there was no reason to worry. He was just there to have a coffee and catch up. Soon, the conversation turned to my app. He seemed extremely interested, asking detailed questions about the features and development. "So how did you handle integrating the legacy systems? That must have been a headache," he asked casually. "Yes, it was complicated, but we managed to create an interface that communicates well with the old systems. We still have some challenges, but we are making progress," I replied, trying not to go into too much detail. As we talked, an uneasy feeling began to set in. Why was Ethan so interested in the technical details? He was always curious, but something seemed different. In the following weeks, he appeared frequently for lunches and coffee, always with new questions. "Jacob, how are you managing your data security? With all these security breaches lately, it's something we have to take very seriously," he asked one day, with a tone that seemed more inquisitive than concerned. "We are implementing multiple layers of security. It's an ongoing process, but we are confident in our measures," I replied, trying to maintain a neutral tone. These interactions began to raise my suspicions. I decided to share my concerns with Sarah. "Sarah, Ethan has been asking a lot of questions about the app. Very detailed questions. I'm starting to think he might have ulterior motives, I confessed, as we reviewed some reports in the office. Do you think he might be spying for the rival company? Asked Sarah, raising an eyebrow. I don't know, but it's a possibility. He works for them, after all. Maybe we should be more cautious with the information we share, I suggested. Sarah agreed, and we decided to keep a closer eye on Ethan's actions. With each encounter, I felt more and more uncomfortable. One night, after a meeting with Ethan, I decided to confront him. Ethan, I need to ask you something. Why are you so interested in my app? It seems like you're more focused on the technical details than anything else, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He looked surprised and a little offended. Jacob, I'm only interested because I'm your friend. I want to see you do well. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, he replied, with a defensive tone. But the seed of doubt was already planted. I began investigating further, and with Sarah's help, we discovered that Ethan was sending confidential information to the rival company. The betrayal was a hard blow. Ethan, someone I considered a friend, was undermining all of my work. Jacob, we found proof. Ethan is leaking information to the rival company, Sarah said, showing the communications logs. Feeling betrayed and angry, I cut off all ties with Ethan. I notified the company's security team and we reinforced all protection measures for our project. Confronting Ethan wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Ethan, I know what you did. You are leaking information to the rival company. This is an unforgivable betrayal, he said, facing him directly. He tried to justify himself, but the evidence was irrefutable. Jacob, I can explain, he began, but I interrupted him. There's nothing you can say that will change what you've done. It's over, Ethan, I finished, with a sense of resolution. It was a painful but necessary moment. Having Sarah by my side throughout this process was crucial. Together, we reinforce our commitment to the project and prepare for future challenges. We knew the battle was far from over, but we were determined to get our work recognized in the right way. Facing a profound ethical dilemma was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. My app, developed with so much effort and dedication, was about to change the way my company operated. However, pressure was mounting from all sides. Sarah was always by my side, encouraging me to follow my path, but the final decision had to be mine. It was a rainy afternoon when I received the proposal from the rival company. They offered me an exorbitant amount of money to buy the app. The offer was tempting, especially considering the lack of support I was receiving internally. Sarah and I were in my little makeshift home office, surrounded by screens, charts, and notes scattered everywhere. Jacob, you can't accept that offer, Sarah said, her tone serious but concerned. We both know what's at stake here. You've worked so hard to get here, you can't throw it all away. I know, Sarah. But the offer is tempting. They're offering more money than I ever imagined. And on top of that, inside the company, Mark is doing everything he can to sabotage me. I'm starting to think I might never get the recognition I deserve here, I replied, trying to hide my frustration. Sarah sighed and walked over, placing her hand on my shoulder. Jacob, you have to believe in what you're doing. This app has incredible potential, and you know it. It's not just about money. It's about principles, about doing the right thing. And you've always been a person of integrity. I looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. Sarah was right. I knew that selling the app to the rival company would mean betraying my own values and hard work. However, the temptation was great, and the internal pressure was consuming me. We've faced so much together, I continued. Mark, Ethan, all this sabotage. What if I keep fighting and, in the end, I lose everything? What if I never manage to prove the value of my work? Sarah shook her head. Jacob, you are not alone in this. I am here with you. And we will get through this together. You just need to believe in yourself and your work. Don't let pressure make you doubt who you are. She had a point. My mind was a jumble of thoughts, but Sarah's support was constant and unwavering. I knew deep down she was right. Selling the app would mean compromising everything I believed in. I think you're right, he said finally. I can't let pressure make me make a decision I'll regret. I need to keep fighting for what I believe in. Sarah smiled, looking relieved. That's right, Jacob. Let's do this together. Let's show everyone what your app can do. I then decided that I would not sell the app. The road ahead would be difficult, but I knew I would follow my principles regardless of external pressure. Sarah and I would continue to work together, facing all challenges. The rival company's proposal only served to reinforce my determination to fight for the recognition I deserved. Over the next few days, the pressure continued, but I was more confident in my choices. Sarah and I came up with a plan to step up the app's security and make sure information wasn't leaked. We decided that the best way to show the true value of my work would be during the upcoming crucial conference. The battle was far from over, but with Sarah by my side and a newfound determination, I was ready to face any challenge that came my way. After all, integrity and commitment to my principles were worth more than any financial offer. And in the end, that was what really mattered. When I finally confirmed my suspicions about Ethan, it was like the ground disappeared from beneath my feet. The image of the college friend, with whom I had so often shared ideas and dreams, was now tarnished by betrayal. I was at my desk, reviewing the application server access logs, when I found an unusual pattern. I accessed the data and, when crossing the information, I realized that Ethan was behind everything. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, meeting Sarah in the hallway. She noticed the seriousness in my tone and followed me into an empty meeting room. What happened, Jacob? She asked, worried. It's about Ethan. I have proof that he's leaking information to the rival company, I said, showing her the access logs and the encrypted messages I managed to decipher. Sarah was silent for a moment, absorbing the gravity of the situation. This is very serious, Jacob. We need to act quickly. I know, I replied, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. But first, I need to confront him. I need to hear from him. At the end of the day, I texted Ethan and asked to meet at a coffee shop we used to go to when we were in college. He readily accepted, without suspecting that I already knew everything. When I got to the cafe, Ethan was there, smiling as if nothing had happened. I sat at the table opposite him, trying to remain calm. So what's new? He asked casually. I took a deep breath and got straight to the point. I know what you're doing, Ethan. I know you're leaking information from my app to the rival company. His smile disappeared instantly, replaced by an expression of surprise and then guilt. Jacob, I can explain. Explain what? I interrupted, anger finally boiling over. That you betrayed our friendship? That you put my job and career at risk? They offered me an absurd amount of money, Jacob. I was having financial difficulties. I didn't know what to do. I shook my head in disbelief. Money? You know how much that means to me. You know how hard I worked to get here. Ethan looked down, defeated. I'm sorry, Jacob. There are no excuses for what I did. I stood up, unable to look at him for another second. It's over, Ethan. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I returned to the office, feeling heavy but determined. I immediately strengthened the applications. Security, implementing new layers of encryption and real-time monitoring. Sarah helped me review all the measures, ensuring there were no further loopholes. We'll get through this, Jacob, she said, placing her hand on my shoulder. We're in this together. The next few days were intense, but the feeling of being in control again gave me new energy. Sarah and I worked tirelessly, preparing for the conference that could change everything. It was difficult to cut ties with Ethan, someone I considered a close friend. However, as I looked at Sarah and saw the trust and support in her eyes, I knew I had found a true ally. And together, we were stronger than ever. As we tightened security and planned our performance, we knew the battle was far from over. But, with each obstacle overcome, I felt the conviction that we were on the right path, and that the recognition I had fought for was finally within our reach. Determined to ensure that the innovation I developed finally received the recognition it deserved, Sarah and I decided to step up preparations for a crucial conference where the app would be presented. The pressure was mounting, and I knew this was our chance to show the world the revolutionary potential of my creation. The weeks leading up to the conference were exhausting. I spent endless hours fine-tuning the application's technical details, while Sarah worked on the presentation strategy and contacts with potential investors. "Jacob, you need to get some rest," Sarah advised me, with a worried expression on her face. "You're working yourself to death." "I know, Sarah, but I can't leave anything to chance." "This is our chance to prove ourselves right," I replied, trying to hide my tiredness with a smile. Meanwhile, Mark, realizing his sabotage plan was failing, resorted to more drastic measures. One night, when everyone had left, I decided to stay a little longer to check some codes. It was then that I heard a strange noise coming from the server room. "Is anyone there?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. The answer came in the form of a familiar figure. Mark was trying to access the server where the application's source code was stored. When he realized he had been caught, he tried to hide it. "Jacob, I was just checking some data," he stuttered. "Checking data at 11 p.m., Mark?" I replied, without hiding my suspicion. He tried to justify himself, but the situation was too clear to ignore. I decided not to confront him directly at that time, but I knew I needed to reinforce our job security immediately. "Sarah, we have a problem," I said, as soon as I found a moment alone with her the next day. "What happened, Jacob?" she asked, visibly worried. "Mark tried to access the source code last night. We need to take more drastic measures to protect our work," I explained. "I understand. Let's reinforce security and prepare a strategy to expose any attempted sabotage during the conference," she suggested, with the determination I so admired. We spent the next few days implementing a series of additional security measures. We install tracking systems and create encrypted versions of the source code. Every step we took was meticulously planned to ensure nothing could compromise our performance. Finally, the day of the conference arrived. The atmosphere was tense, but Sarah and I were ready. We entered the auditorium, aware that that moment would define our future. "Jacob, are you ready?" Sarah asked, holding my hand tightly. "Yes, I am." "Let's do this," I replied, feeling a surge of confidence. As I walked onto the stage, I looked out at the audience, which included investors, coworkers and, of course, Mark, with an expression of pure frustration. I started the presentation, explaining every detail of the application and its potential to transform the organization's productivity. The innovation we present today is not just a technological advancement. It is a new paradigm for efficiency and resource management, I declared, feeling the energy in the room shift as people began to understand the magnitude of what we were presenting. During the presentation, Sarah and I revealed the sabotage and espionage attempts we had faced, without directly naming names, but implying that there were internal forces working against us. "We have implemented a series of security measures to protect our work," I explained, as Sarah projected onto the screen irrefutable evidence that Mark and Ethan were involved in espionage and sabotage. The audience's reaction was a mix of shock and admiration. Mark tried to defend himself, but the evidence was too clear to ignore. Shortly afterwards, the company's management made the decision to fire Mark and initiate legal proceedings against Ethan and the rival company. In the end, my work was finally recognized. I received a promotion and, more importantly, the satisfaction of knowing that my innovation would be implemented, forever changing the way the company operated. Sarah and I, now a couple, celebrated our victory, knowing we had overcome every obstacle together. "We did it, Jacob," Sarah said, hugging me. "Yes, we did it." "And this is just the beginning," I replied, looking to the future with renewed hope and determination. We arrived at the conference with our hearts in our hands. Sarah and I knew that this would be a defining moment, not only for the future of the app, but also for our careers. The atmosphere at the venue was charged with expectation and tension. It was as if every person in the audience could sense that something monumental was about to happen. Are you ready? Sarah asked, trying to hide her anxiety with an encouraging smile. Yes, I am. We have no other choice, right? I responded, trying to sound confident despite the whirlwind of emotions that overwhelmed me inside. I went up to the stage, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I started the presentation by highlighting the application's main functionality and how it could radically transform the organization's productivity. With each slide, each practical demonstration, the audience seemed more impressed. I knew I was winning them over, but the real revelation was yet to come. Before I conclude, I need to share something else with you, I began, taking a deep breath. This project was not only a technical challenge, but also a battle against internal and external forces that tried, at all costs, to sabotage our work. There was a growing murmur in the room, people exchanged curious and surprised looks. I continued without mentioning names, but making it clear enough for everyone to understand the gravity of the situation. We faced attempts at sabotage within the company, as well as corporate espionage by a rival organization. These actions not only threaten the success of the app, but also the integrity and professional ethics that we value so much. The reaction was immediate. Some members of the audience were open-mouthed, others were whispering among themselves, visibly shocked. Sarah, sitting in the front row, looked at me with eyes full of pride and support. But we didn't let ourselves get discouraged, I continued. Instead, we have implemented a series of security and tracking measures to protect our work. And it is with great satisfaction that I can say that these measures not only protected the application, but also allowed us to identify those responsible for the sabotage attempts. By now, the tension in the room was almost palpable. I could hear my heart pounding, but the certainty that we were close to a fair victory gave me the strength to continue. I would like to call Sarah to the stage to share the evidence we have gathered. Sarah got up and walked onto the stage next to me. With a series of slides, she exposed the sabotage attempts, leaving no doubt about the veracity of the information. The audience was in absolute silence, absorbing every detail. This evidence clearly shows that there was a deliberate attempt to discredit our work, said Sarah. And we are here to ensure that the truth prevails. It was then that we revealed the most damning evidence. We tracked access to the source code and identified the manipulations carried out by Mark, our head of sector, and the information leaks by Ethan, my old friend from college, who now worked for the rival company. The room erupted in murmurs and exclamations. Some attendees stood up in outrage, while others stared in disbelief at the details presented. In light of this evidence, we hope that justice will be served, I concluded. We are not seeking revenge, but rather recognition for the hard work and integrity we have maintained throughout this process. Shortly after the presentation, the company's board of directors met urgently. Mark was fired immediately, and the company began legal proceedings against Ethan and the rival organization. I finally received the recognition I had longed for, being promoted to a prominent position. Sarah and I, now more united than ever, celebrated our victory, knowing that we overcame every obstacle together. We did it, Jacob, said Sarah, smiling as we toasted our success. And that's just the beginning. Yes, it's just the beginning, I replied, feeling a rush of relief and happiness. And now, let's show the world what we are capable of. The sense of relief and triumph was still palpable as I watched the conference audience, their faces mixed between surprise and awe. Sarah was by my side, and I felt her presence like an unshakable pillar of support. But the real twist was yet to come. Jacob, are you ready? Sarah asked, her voice a whisper only I could hear. Yes, I replied, with renewed confidence. It's time. I went back on stage and took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, there is something else I need to share with you, I began, feeling the weight of the words I was about to say. During the development of this application, we faced not only technical challenges, but also internal and external obstacles that threatened our integrity and the security of our work. The room was completely silent, every gaze fixed on me. I continued, we have implemented a series of security and tracking measures in the app, anticipating possible sabotage attempts. Today, we have presented irrefutable evidence that members of our own team were involved in these actions. At that moment, Sarah came on stage with me. She connected her laptop to the projection system and began displaying a series of graphs and logs. This is evidence of suspicious activity and unauthorized access to the application's source code, she explained. All data was tracked and documented. I continued. First, Mark, our head of business, manipulated data and falsified reports to discredit our work. He also attempted to steal the source code, a desperate move to ensure our innovation never saw the light of day. The audience's reaction was immediate: murmurs, expressions of shock, and even some screams of indignation. Above the commotion, I managed to see Mark, his face losing all color as he tried, futilely, to hide his nervousness. But it doesn't stop there, I added, feeling the tension rising. Ethan, a college friend who now works for a rival company, infiltrated our team to spy and leak critical information. We have records of communications between him and the rival company, proving his betrayal. Sarah displayed more evidence on the screen: emails, text messages, all meticulously documented. This evidence will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities, she concluded. The room erupted in applause and murmurs of approval. The company's management, present at the conference, had no choice but to act quickly. Mark was fired on the spot, escorted from the premises, while Ethan and his company faced legal action. The feeling of justice finally achieved was intoxicating. After the conference, the board called me for a private meeting. "Jacob," said the CEO, a serious-looking man with eyes that now sparkled with a new appreciation, "you have demonstrated a level of integrity and competence that we rarely see. It is with great pleasure that I offer you a promotion to the position of Director of Technological Innovation." The news brought a wave of relief and joy. "Thank you, sir," I replied, feeling the weight of years of struggle finally lift. That night, Sarah and I celebrated our victory. Sitting in a cozy restaurant, we toasted to the future. "We did it, Jacob," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, we did it," I agreed, holding his hand. "And it wouldn't have been possible without you by my side." She smiled, and in that moment, I realized that not only had I achieved the recognition and promotion I so desired, but I had also found an invaluable partner, both in my professional and personal life. For us, we toasted together, knowing that regardless of the challenges ahead, we would face everything together, as we always have.